Welcome back to Flying Upstream. We are your hosts, Louisa and Kristen, and today we're diving into some incredible stories of transformation and empowerment. This podcast is all about celebrating those who've broken the rules, faced challenges head on, and created a life that's uniquely theirs. Today we have two amazing guests, Trevor Davis and Becca Stackhouse-Morson. Both have done incredible things in their own right, and we can't wait to get to know them.
Yes, exactly. Trevor Davis has been traveling the world for the last few years while helping solopreneurs create businesses they love. He's a marketer, a copywriter, and an expert at integrating AI into business operations. Trevor is all about empowering others to streamline their workflow and have a business they're passionate about.
Love
Welcome,
that.
Trevor.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Thank you. And we are also joined by Becca Stackhouse-Morson, the founder of Stacked Intent, a business focused on helping people build an authentic relationship with themselves. Becca is a certified life educator, yoga instructor, and self defense teacher. She spent her career empowering people to live their truth no matter the circumstances. Becca, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. All right. So before we dive into really heavy questions, let's play a fun game of two truths and a lie. And this has been our favorite game. I think my favorite episodes have been the ones where we've played this game. So I'm looking forward to this. And this is how it works. Each one of you will tell us three things about yourself, two that are true and one that is a lie. And Kristen and I, we will try to guess which one is the lie. Becca, you have the floor first.
Okay. Let's see. I'm going to go with I've never traveled. I've had my CFLE for more than a decade, and I learned to completely love my time with self.
That's tough.
Well, I'm going to guess that you have learned to love yourself. And the travel one, I don't know about. I think most people have traveled, but certainly not everyone. I don't know. What do you think, Louisa?
It's hard. That's where I'm stuck too. I think I'm gonna go with you haven't had your CFLE for more than a decade.
Trevor, you want to weigh in?
I was going to echo that. Seems like maybe it's been less than 10 years. Maybe there's a nuance in there.
So, no, I've had my CFLE for 11 years this year. So, the lie would be I've never traveled. I love to travel. So,
Well, that's good because traveling is awesome. So I'm glad to hear
so
that.
much fun.
Yes,
Nice.
that's awesome.
What's up?
All right, Trevor, it's your turn. Hit us with your two truths and a lie.
Well, given you introed me that I've already been traveling the world, and in contrast there, I'll say one is I am homeless, technically. I am settling down and stopping traveling, and I am going to Mexico next month.
These are tough. These are tough ones.
I know. I feel like they could all be true.
Yeah. Um. Okay. So it's January. Next month it's February. So I'm gonna go with Mexico has to be true because that would be amazing. Okay. So I'm gonna go with the lie is you are gearing down and looking to settle down and stop the travels.
I agree. I think once you get the travel bug, it's hard to slow that down, hard to stop it.
You want to
I,
weigh
I,
in? Becca? What do you think?
I think it's the settle down.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys think so, but I am actually looking to do that after my trip to Mexico happening this month. So
Oh,
I got you on the little
nice.
nuance. All technically true.
I like that. That's those were great ones because it was really hard to get away from and like focus on the little nuances. So thank you both. Thank you for sharing that.
On the
That's
play.
awesome.
Thank you guys.
All right, now that we know you a little bit better, let's get into the good stuff. Trevor, you've been traveling the world while running your business. I'm curious to know, how has immersing yourself in different cultures affected your approach to business and to life in general?
Yeah, great question. I think if anything with traveling and trying to juggle business at the same time, it's taught me to be so much more adaptable and learning the different perspectives of different cultures and immersing myself in those has made me realize, how much we need to do that in business as well. So yeah, in life and business, just rolling with the punches, the day-to-day changes, same thing when you're in one country one week to another country the next month. It's, yeah, always teaching me to just be open to new things, trying new things on, new perspectives, and being okay with how the path might unfold.
I think that's wonderful. I think it really shows in a way like just your adaptability, your ability to just adapt to whatever new environment you're in a new culture in a new country. And that's also so important in business. I think sometimes, personally, getting into business for myself, I didn't expect to kind of have to be a chameleon the way that you do um, end up having to be. So thank you for sharing that. Um, let's see. I have a question for Becca. Becca, we talked a little bit about the importance of self care. How you have absolutely integrated that. Kristen and I talk about that all the time on this podcast about the importance of living in a world where, we're so conditioned to focus on productivity, on how do we get our clients to do this, or how can we sleep and work at the same time. How do you get your clients to make themselves a priority without feeling that guilt that comes along with it?
I think it's sometimes looking at self care in a different perspective. Of sometimes when we think about self care, it's going to get a massage or going to just do something like that. Whereas part of how I look at self care is it may just be making sure the dishes are done or making sure you've put away the laundry. Like your space that you live in being organized in the way that you need it, that's self care. And so it's just defining self care in a way. It's not looking at it in a selfish way, but it's looking at it in a, okay, if my house isn't in these orders, well, then that's going to clutter your mind some, especially if you're working from home. So it's really looking at what is self-care for me. And self-care, like for me personally, it's making sure everything's back in its space and in its spot. And if it doesn't have its home, I'm pretty known for just getting rid of things if it can't find a home. So, but it's finding those things for yourself of what does self-care look like for you? Because like it can also be things like journaling or your exercise, or and so it's making sure that you mold your day to incorporate those aspects of a day.
Okay, that's resonating with me so much right now because I feel like I went through a period where I really didn't understand self-care and I had none. Everything I did was for other people, and I thought that it would make me feel better to help others, and it did to an extent. And I think self-care didn't that phrase didn't really rise up until a few years ago during the pandemic, and all of a sudden people were realizing how important it was to put yourself first. And I'm curious to hear Trevor's perspective on this because as you've been traveling around, it's a lot of logistics, right? You're, where am I going? Where am I sleeping? What's happening? What am I doing today? How are you still running your business? So how has your experience been in all the chaos and joy of your travels, making sure that you are still having your own self-care moments too?
Yeah, I think Becca definitely hit the nail on the head with that. Having to define it for yourself because it'll be so different, different circumstances, different places. For me, sometimes if that's in when I was in Southeast Asia last year, when you can justify, the massages all the time when they're $10. Those are a great way to go for those methods of self care. But also, making sure everything has its place. Even when we're just living out of a suitcase, to actually unpack, get organized, live in the space that you're going to call home for a month, and be able to feel like you got some sense of semblance of normal. Sometimes that's a Airbnb that has like a gym or a pool or sauna or something, and just like seeing what you got to work with, and then seeing, okay, well, what are we going to set up? We kind of get the opportunity to reinvent the routine, the kind of schedule and whatnot in each place. So seeing what you're working with, and then just knowing what are the kind of baseline self-care measures you want to put in place, and honoring those, and kind of in the same way, making sure things have a place, making sure your work has its space and the time dedicated to it to feel good, not be stressed out about playing catch up all the time, and then getting on with then being able to enjoy where you're at. And I think balancing it all, and just acknowledging that you're not going to get it all done, and there's always going to be the trade-offs, and being okay with that as well is definitely a key piece on the mindset front.
Yeah, and that's so important. I love the way you just like you so thoroughly explain that, because it does look different for everyone. And when you're traveling, the world from place to place, you have to stop and think about those things. And I think that there's nothing more important than when we stop and have to give thought to those things, because that's like the core of realizing the importance of self-care, and how we then define who we are, like what makes us who we are, and the authenticity and all of that, and the ability to connect to ourselves. And I wonder, for Becca, for you, what was the defining moment in your life when you realized the importance of staying true to who you are through all of life's changes?
I kind of have had it all my life, but I would say that the biggest moment was when I was diagnosed with Crohn's. So between my junior, senior year of high school, I started to lose a tremendous amount of weight. And then we went through about a year and a half of trying to figure out what was wrong. And then when I was diagnosed with Crohn's, it was one of those things that my doctor said I could either let it control my life or I could figure out how to live with it. And so I figured out how to manage it with my food, with my exercise, with my rest. And so that would be my defining moment of really that self became really important, because I had to learn how I was in my freshman year of college, and I had to learn how to talk for myself of like, nope, I need this. Like I had to figure it out alone because I lived in a dorm room. I was by myself. And so that would be the moment that I really learned why it was so important. And then I've kind of continued that through each transition of this is why it's important for me to eat at a certain time. Like if I let myself get too hungry, it can flare my Crohn's. And so it's just vocalizing that. And I had to once I got married, I had to then vocalize that to my husband of, I understand you might like to eat dinner together, but I had to eat an hour ago. Here's dinner. It's ready for you. And so it was just learning that it's okay, but you have to still communicate what you need. Like you have to recognize what you need, but then there's people in your life you've got to be able to communicate that with, or they're kind of in a lost space of, well, you just ate without me. Yeah, but this is the reason why.
I love how you make a point to speak up and be your own advocate. I think that's so important, especially as women. We're often taught that we should just do what people tell us, be a good girl, sit down, be quiet, put everybody else ahead of us. And your message is so inspiring that not only is it damaging to other people, but it's most damaging to yourself. And
Agreed.
so just beautiful that you've been able to go through that transition and come out the other side, and not just speak up, but do it in a kind and aware way, right? We don't have to be aggressive and mean, right? That you can say like, "Hey, I understand you're probably curious why I ate an hour ago. Let me explain why. And I made food for you too. I'd love to sit with you." So that whole piece of it is really, really beautiful. And I commend you on going through that transition.
Yeah, it's definitely a journey.
It is. And it's a journey that just keeps on going, right? Um, for Trevor, I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your business and how you do help solopreneurs streamline their operations and integrate AI into their workflow. So, would love to hear more about what you do for them and what's been the most game changing thing that you've implemented for your clients that maybe anyone could start using today.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of journeys, yeah, my business journey's kind of ebbed and flowed a lot over these last handful of years, from really being the one who's been writing the copy, and helping people with their email marketing, and setting things up kind of manually on my own, to the rise of ChatGPT kind of changing the way we all look at how we might write things or research things, and work with different AI tools in our businesses. And I realized pretty quickly that I was going to have to change how I was doing my business again, to the point of adapting and shifting with the landscape, to kind of let AI put me out of business before it does it, without me planning for it. So it really went from all the learnings I had from copywriting, all the templates, all the swipe files, everything that I had put together, to then be able to nail a client's voice and how I was writing the copy for them, putting all that into AI, and being able to then turn those into workflows that people could then utilize on their own without me having to be the one to write it for them. Those sorts of things have really changed the game for my clients, where I can now equip them and empower them to be their own copywriters, to get a great base for things on their own, whether they're writing their content for socials, their email copy, for a sales sequence, or anything else in between. Now they're equipped with that, and I've kind of been able to pass all my learnings over in those sort of regards. So yeah, definitely something I can encourage everyone to do. AI still doesn't quite have the same human touch of a copywriter directly, but to get a really good base and to really empower yourself to learn about these tools, and see how you can better equip yourself, and stay up to date with how they're changing, and how you can be a better prompt engineer and editor, because that's kind of where AI is helping us focus our role when it comes to creating content or copy.
So, follow up question to that. I know a lot of people who don't want to use AI. They think it's misleading and manipulative to put content out into the world, claiming it's yours when you didn't personally write it. And there's some fear that AI and robots are taking over the world. What do you say to people of that mindset?
I mean, to address the second point, we'll see where that goes. Can't speak to the future. Who knows where I will go? And I think that we do need to put in some precautions in place in some of those regards. But as far as what we're working with, the tools that are at our disposal right now, as long as you're not sharing sensitive data with ChatGPT, it's going to use what you share to train its model, and that's part of what you get when you sign up to use it. But if you are trying to make yourself and your message and your impact, elevated at a higher level, AI can help you do that. And it's really not just AI coming up with the content itself, and if you want it to sound like you, if you want it to resonate with your audience in the way that you've understood to do so on your own, that still is going to come from within. You have to be the one to input those prompts, to come up with the structure, to share what examples of stuff you want ChatGPT or other LLMs to model. So at the end of the day, like, my role as a copywriter is really to shift it to prompt engineering and editing, to really keep the heart of the client, in the copy. And that's, at the end of the day, I think, where these are enabling tools to amplify what we already are doing well, and keeping that kind of human aspect of it alive is up to us to decide, yeah, how much of that we want to do. And I think if that's your concern, just make sure you're giving it more feedback up front, and editing it more on the output as well.
That's a great answer, because I think what we miss a lot is one of the main points that you made, which is it is your ideas that you're putting in, it is your thoughts, it is, what you're asking it to give you. But, you know, there are no two people that have the same exact thought process, right? We're all such unique individuals that, while that concern is obviously legitimate for the people who have that concern, I think in this conversation, when we talk about AI and using it to create for whatever creative endeavors we pursue. It feels like that concern leaves out this idea that you've shared, that it's coming from your ideas and it's being created from what you're inputting, which includes like word choice, which includes, the sequence in which we include those words in these systems. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I think this also kind of goes into a little bit of what you do, Becca, because you focus on helping people, find their authenticity. You help people who have faced huge challenges like chronic illnesses or evolving relationships. How do you help them regain their confidence and be able to realize that the power of the life that they get to create is within them, that there is no outside factor that gets to dictate that for them?
So, one of the ways that I do it is through the resources that I've created. And one of those is it's ways to not let yourself vanish. And it's building a strong relationship with yourself. And so, it's looking at 6 areas that I found after asking over 200 people, like, how do you not let yourself vanish? And some people know exactly how they don't. Some people know how exactly they have let themselves vanish. And some people just haven't ever thought about it. And when I really started digging into that, it was interesting because it's that aspect of looking at yourself and it's understanding what might have led you to either not recognize what you need in yourself
Mhm.
or losing the voice to it. And so it's helping people be able to find that voice of their what they really believe they are. And it's allowing yourself to transition. Like you're not the same. You might be in a 10-year span have transitioned a couple of times into different stages or life aspects or what's happening. And so it's being able to kind of maintain what you are in that and what's important to you. Because if it's changed and it's not as important to you, it's okay to let it change and shift, but that
Mhm.
also might mean that there's people in your life that shift and change because they don't make those shifts with you. And so that's really the biggest way I've helped people find is working through it. And in working through finding that authenticity in yourself, sometimes you've got to sit in a little bit of uncomfortable of really figuring out what you love about yourself and what might be an aspect that you don't love as much about yourself. And then figuring out how you move to the next step, how you move to really love in every aspect of yourself, because that can be a hard place to be. And so that's really where I help people is helping them find that part of themselves that maybe they missed because of a transition that happened and it just got buried, or something that they've never been able to discover. And so it's just finding that through really evaluating what's important currently in your life.
I love how you phrase that, Becca, that it's what's important to you, right? And that's different for everybody. And then kind of embracing it and being comfortable with that, right? Because there tends to be this perception there's a trade-off between being your authentic self or being accepted by your peers, your society, your family. And it's hard to find that balance where you are your true authentic self and you love yourself and who you are. And you are also loved by the people that are around you too. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that most people don't understand that you can have both. But to your point, there is a bit of work to be done, right, to get there, but you can have that. And uh, that's just such a great point to bring up, that it is something to work towards and that end goal is different for everybody. And with that in mind, Trevor, I'm curious if you had any experience with that as you were ramping up your own business and traveling the world. I don't know if you started your business before you were traveling or while you were traveling, but what that experience was like for you as you're ramping up your own business and trying to figure out kind of how to make that work for you.
Yeah, I mean, 100% I did. I kind of come back after traveling. after a semester abroad, my last year of university, and kind of had set that goal to be able to work and travel, and knew I wanted to be in business for myself. And knowing I had to make the leap to make that timeline possible, made for a lot of a messy transition, and finding new aspects of, I think, myself and my personal life and my business kind of entrepreneurial identities, to sort of really own and step into the traits of what was needed to make that all possible. So yeah, definitely had a lot of those experiences throughout, and especially while then trying to travel and trying to also keep the business prioritized, but also enjoying the season I was in. I think that's yeah, definitely one thing I've continued to learn through this nomadic journey, through business, and definitely will be a new one for me to keep exploring as I aim to settle down in the spring, and see how I can manage that transition. See if the travel bug's really out of my system.
So what were some of the mistakes that you felt like you made when you were getting started, or some of the biggest challenges?
Yeah, I think the challenges of any early stage entrepreneur trying to put themselves out there, facing the imposter syndrome, kind of the shiny object syndrome of what new business model, which direction, what offer, what to kind of land on. All of those aspects were huge, and yeah, it was probably really only when I hired my first coach that I was able to really hone some of that in, get some extra external accountability, and start putting myself out there, start being willing to make those offers. Um, and yeah, the biggest thing in marketing was to really niche down and specialize both, to be able to have an offer that resonated with a specific audience, and that kind of helped me unlock a lot more of that kind of, I think, business success to move forward from there. Um, but yeah, other challenges from chasing marketing funnel ideas that worked for someone else but didn't resonate with me, and wasting money on that, to trying to stay hidden behind the scenes, and not really allowing myself to kind of step up and put myself out there. Yeah, those definitely are some of the things that have limited my growth through my journey, and lessons I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, I think I love that you shared that, and that you were open and so vulnerable in sharing that, because it can be hard acknowledging the things, all the mistakes that we make when we go into business, for ourselves. So I'm so glad that you put that out there, because it is important to know that there are challenges, just like there are challenges in and like defining ourselves and being authentic in every aspect of our lives. There are challenges when you are working, creating a business, and when you're evolving within that business, just like in life. And I'd love to hear from both of you, as we're getting ready to wrap up, the whether there is a quote, a motto, or a belief that has helped you get through tough times and that has helped you to keep moving forward. Something that maybe you live by, or something that has kept you grounded throughout your journey, that maybe could help a listener too.
Over to you, Becca, if you want it first.
Sure. I would say that mine has kind of been that I'm currently living a dream that I had. And so I've living a dream that I had, and I've created a life that I love. And so even on the hardest days, it's finding what is that dream, or what aspect of that day that I can really, really just love.
Love that. Well said. I'll echo that one, and yeah, maybe just speaking of some of the challenges I was just mentioning, I think finding ways to really just get out of my own way has been a good motto in business. To find whatever it takes to do that. A big fan of Stoic philosophy, and just focusing on what's in my control, and trusting the process, having some gratitude, like you're saying there, Becca, acknowledging the work you put in to get there, and trusting that if you focus on what's in your control, get out of your own way, that'll help you get to where you're going.
That's amazing. That's great. Thank you both so much for sharing your journeys, your stories, that have essentially brought you to where you are today, here with us. Trevor and Becca, you're both really inspiring. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for putting yourself out there and sharing it with us. And I know that our listeners are going to feel the same way. Thank you for being our guests today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a
Thank you for
fun time.
having me.
It's been such a privilege to have you both on. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration to break the molds.
And we will see you next time. But in the meantime, remember, it's your life, your path, your story. Keep flying upstream. Until next time.